Oh boy, looks like things are starting to get crazy when it comes to Earl Spence and Terrence Crawford. There was a report that came out early on today, and it was talking about how the fact that Earl Spence's team basically a month ago, Earl had sent Terrence Crawford a revised contract. I guess it was like three different things that Terrence Crawford had an issue with that he wanted to change or put into the contract. Maybe it was the things that people were talking about before about having transparency and having the right to, uh, you know, to uh, to okay expenses or whatever it is. Whatever the three things were, they did say that they revised it. They said they weren't that serious to them, and they sent the contract back to them to sign. Basically, it's supposed to be just the last points, get this deal signed, get it done, and move on. Because I'm guessing probably they had it. They thought they had everything done and set before, and they sent him a final draft. But then that's when they came up with, hey, well, I need these things changed too. So they just changed them and they sent them to him, and they haven't heard back from him. I guess in the last couple of weeks, in about over 2 weeks, they haven't heard from them yet. Um, then some, but people are, we're thinking that in my head, I'm almost thinking like, you know what, whatever. Like we've heard of a million different sources, a million different pieces of information. I'm not believing any of it. So that's kind of, that's what the way my mindset was when as it pertained to that information. It's like, well, even though it's making Terrence Crawford bad, okay, I'm still treating it the same way as when it was making Earl Spence bad. I said in previous videos, don't believe any of the sources because no one knows what they're talking about. That's what I pretty much put out there. But Terrence Crawford pretty much, I guess he retweeted that what was put out there. And then he basically put the information down that this guy's been stalling for months. I could have fought in November. You know, kind of basic corroborating what was said. And we know for a long time Earl Spence and his side have pretty much been quiet when it comes to this, regardless of what information was coming out, false information, contradictory information. They've stayed quiet. And just kept on staying down, staying focused, and have stayed negotiating. But I guess, eventually you're going to reach a certain point where it's like, all right, eventually you reach a point where it's like, okay, this fight's not happening, or they're not serious, and I guess it probably they've gotten to the point where he doesn't believe that, this, that Terrence Crawford is serious and that Terrence Crawford really wants to do this fight, especially right now. So it looks like he might be getting to the point where he's going to have to move on. The last time this guy fought was in April. And you have to remember, this is a man who had the retinal tear. So he missed a huge payday because of the retinal tear. This is a man who also got into that major car accident, lost a lot of time, missed multiple paydays because of that. Your time is limited in the sport. You don't know how many years you have, and he's somebody that's already in his 30s. So now because he's been so deep in negotiations with this particular guy, with Terrence Crawford, if he ends up not fighting this year, another time this year, that's a $5 to $10 million payday that he's lost that he's not getting back. That's another $5 to $10 million he's lost and he's not getting back. But I think everybody's been really focused and steadfast, pretty much trying to make this happen because of Earl Spence and him really wanting this fight done. And it's almost like what I said with the Canelo Alvarez situation with Caleb Plant. All this little rumors are coming out that Caleb Plant was ducking, Caleb Plant was outpricing himself, which made no sense because Caleb Plant's side is the one that's putting up the money. Caleb Plant didn't really want this fight. And I'm like, yeah, okay, these negotiations finished, we're going to find out what's really going on. And the fight ended up not happening at first. And it turned out that wasn't the case. It was Canelo Alvarez kept asking for thing after thing after thing. They kept obliging him and obliging him and obliging him and obliging him until they got to the point where it's like, all right, we can't go any further. And they got put into a situation where they had to walk away from it. And then obviously then Canelo ends up coming back. They sign the contract and they move on and they do the fight. So when it comes to this particular situation, what I've said previously is that, yes, we're hearing certain information come out, but eventually, once everything is said and done and those contracts are set, whether the fight gets signed or whether it does not get signed, as soon as people walk away, we're going to find out the truth about what's really going on. So this is just a little inkling. Hopefully the fight still gets done. Hopefully Terrence Crawford signs, sends it back, and we get this bout that we wanted. But like I've said before, at some point you have to walk away. You can't just, I mean, because Terrence Crawford can sit around. He can do nothing. He has nothing set anyway. He has no deals with anybody. He has no fights, set up. Like what DAZN said no to him. ESPN said no to him. Unless DAZN decided, I could see a situation where, let's say, DAZN decided that, you know what, hey, let's give him a multi-fight deal like Matchroom. Then he's, signs a 2-3 fight deal with Matchroom, and he goes off to fight in the UK or something like that. I can see maybe even something like that. If something like that popped up, I could see him taking something like that. Because at the end of the day, I think his mindset is, what you make over the length of your contract, having a top rank state of mind. So if you can get easier fights and get paid a lucrative amounts of money for it, he'd rather do that than put yourself into space where you could do this one fight that could take years off of your career, or fights off of your career, or end your career. They think long term. That's part of the reason why when people tell me about these fights between Tank and this guy and that guy, I always say, no, it's not going to happen. Because Top Rank thinks long term, how much money they can make off these guys long term. So maybe I could understand if he has something set like that, he'd want to be just walk away from it, utilize this as leverage to get that deal, or just he has nothing planned so he can, keep doing this BS, because at the end of the day, he has nothing set up anyway. It's not hurting him in any way, so it could be that too. But regardless of what's going on, I mean, Earl Spence has got to the point, I believe, where he does need to walk away from this bout. You can't hold up your career. You don't know how many fights you have left in your career. It could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 3. Anything can happen. So you can't just keep walking away from paydays. And he's literally, if he doesn't fight at the end of this year, he will have lost a $5 to $10 million payday, because he's been trying to get this particular fight done and trying to get this negotiated. And you've got to the point where everything supposedly is agreed to. Everything is supposedly done, and the person still doesn't want, everything is done, and the person comes back with additional things, even though things were, quote, done, then you give him that too, and then all of a sudden after that, he's like, he's not getting back to you. At some point, you have to say, like, you know what, that's enough. So, hopefully, what I'm hoping for is that they're able to set up something for Earl Spence in December, and we can see him fight in December. Obviously, if they can't, then we're not going to obviously see him until next year. But yeah, it looks like that report that came out is actually true. It's actually, accurate, because it's being basically co-signed by Earl Spence. And that's big, because Earl Spence, for the most part, has been quiet. He's been quiet, might do a little yawning emojis and stuff like that. But for the most part, he said absolutely nothing. His whole team has been 100% fully focused on getting this bout done. So for things like that to happen, it pretty much shows where things are. And I'm not really surprised by it. And I'm not really surprised by it just due to the fact that the last couple of weeks we have been getting all this talk from the Terrence Crawford side, where he's been leaking information to people saying that, oh, he signed a contract, which ended up having signed it, saying he agreed to no money down, where they offered him no money and he agreed to that. And that's not a good thing if you're lying about that too, because they'll release those contracts, unless, I don't know if they have anything as far as disclosure agreements or whatever. If not, they'll show part of that contract showing that, hey, no, we did offer him this amount of money, So, but, him coming out with that information, I always thought it was a bad omen. It was a bad thing. Whenever things are quiet, whenever both sides are not talking, that's when, I don't care how long it takes, it's all good. Things are good when things are like that. But once people start talking, once people start leaking information, and then it's misinformation on top. First you sign the contract, then it goes from you signed the contract to you getting no money down, and you agree to even you getting no rematch clause, and as far as you're concerned, but Earl Spence gets a rematch clause, and in that rematch, you're getting still a short end of the stick as well. Then all of a sudden, like, oh no, you're fighting for a rematch clause, and other issue is that you need transparency, and you need to be able to say, okay, expenses to the bout. Like, it doesn't make any, and it's just one thing after another. It's almost like you're just throwing things on the wall just to see what sticks. in order to try to make the other side look bad, especially since you know the other side isn't talking, or you're basically in a position where you don't intend on doing this bout and you're waiting for the other side to be the one to say that, you know what, we're done, and waiting for the other side to walk away. So it's like, oh, see, you know, they walked away. I was going to do the fight. I was willing to do the fight, but they walked away from it. You know, they didn't want to finish negotiating. They didn't really want to fight. Or Earl Spence wanted to fight, but his handlers didn't really want it. The business side, they didn't really want it. You know, so, you know, and just kind of spilling that kind of information. But again, my hope is that we can get Earl Spence in December. It seems as if PBC is pretty much kind of setting things up where they're probably going to get some bouts at the end of November and that they're going to get some bouts in December. So hopefully Earl Spence is on one of those. Hopefully we get to see Ennis, you know, and a couple of, you know, the rest of these other guys that we haven't seen for a while, you know, because a lot of things have been held up while they've been trying to get this fight done, because pretty much everything was going to flow around this particular bout. You know, so it's not, this is not the only fight that we're losing by these negotiations continue to go on. We're losing other bouts as well. You know, we're losing other events as well, you know, that are being affected by these negotiations. So, you know, whatever happens, it happens. But I think it's time to either get it done or not. You know, it's time, if you have to walk away, then freaking walk away. If Earl's is moving to 154 pounds, then move to 154 pounds. But definitely don't, you know, and if you, you know, and if I don't know what Terence Crawford's going to do, you know, at this point, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if he has something else set up, but, you know, the zone has said no for now. Matchroom has said no for now. Top Rank has said no for now. But Terence Crawford also hasn't refiled that contract with Top Rank. So, yeah, I mean, that lawsuit with Top Rank. He hasn't refiled that lawsuit with Top Rank. He's been in a lot of Top Rank events. So, who knows what might be going on with that. But, you know, soon we should see what exactly is going on. And if it gets done or it breaks completely apart, we should know the full story of what exactly is going on when it comes to these two. But for now, like, subscribe, share. I'm out.